Hello, you're listening to Hugo Talks. So this video is called Indiana Jones Smear Campaign. If you notice, there's another Indiana Jones movie. I think it came out on Friday. It's called Indiana Jones and the Stair Lift to the Infirmary. How old is Harrison Ford now? He's 80 years old. An action hero? I mean, he can't help getting old, I suppose. Not much he can do about that, but it just looks stupid, doesn't it? And from what I've seen of it, it doesn't work. It's just silly. Now, this video is not about the new movie. What it's about is about this fella called Ron Wyatt. Now, where do you start with this? Ron Wyatt was a guy who, starting from 1977, he says he was directed by God to go and find biblical artifacts and places around the world. Now, Ron Wyatt, back in 1977, said he found Noah's Ark in Turkey. The government of Turkey even officially recognized it as Noah's Ark in 1986. There is even a national park for it there now. And loads of people will say that they've never even heard of that before. Ron Wyatt claimed to have found the Red Sea crossing, located Mount Sinai, the Mount Sinai that Moses got the 10 Commandments from, the top of it being set on fire by God. The Roman Catholic Church Empire will have you believe that Mount Sinai is in Egypt, yeah? Where they did that climate commandment stunt back in November 2022. You remember that one at the COP27? That's a counterfeit Mount Sinai. And this one, located by Ron Wyatt, it looks to be the genuine Mount Sinai. The top is completely black from being burnt. The rocks, if you crack them open, are not black on the inside. This is only on the top of the mountain, not down the side of the mountain. Also, numerous other things point to it being the correct location. He's also located Sodom and Gomorrah, a place completely full of balls of sulfur, sulfur being brimstone. And all of these were located using details from the King James Bible. There is also the claim of finding the Ark of the Covenant, which there is a lot of controversy over. Now, this all started in 1977. All of these discoveries started happening 1977. And he got very little media coverage at the time, if any at all. You would think that it would be big news, wouldn't you? But no, very little coverage. I mean, even if you don't believe this guy, you would think he would be more well known for just making these claims anyway, because anyone who would claim to find all of these biblical artifacts and areas, he should go down as the greatest archaeologist in the world ever. And if he's pulling a fast one, then he's the greatest archaeologist swindler in the world ever. Yet what he did is not well known at all. Here's a clip to give you a brief idea of the claims, okay?
Did Ron Wyatt really discover important biblical sites in the Middle East? His discoveries are confirmation of biblical events and narratives. Here are the key discoveries attributed to Ron Wyatt. 1. Noah's Ark. According Wyatt's discovery of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat is seen as evidence supporting the biblical account of the global flood and Noah's preservation of animal species. 2. Red Sea crossing. Supporters of Wyatt's claims believe that his findings in the Gulf of Aqaba provide evidence for the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea by the Israelites, as described in Exodus. 3. Sodom and Gomorrah. Wyatt's identification of the remains of Sodom and Gomorrah near the Dead Sea is seen as confirmation of God's judgment on these cities, as described in the book of Genesis. 4. Ark of the Covenant. Supporters believe that Wyatt's alleged discovery of the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem would validate the historical and religious significance of this artifact in the biblical narrative. It is important to note that while these claims have gained traction within certain Christian circles, they remain highly controversial and lack widespread acceptance within the broader archaeological and scholarly communities because of their control. Skeptics point out the lack of rigorous scientific evidence, the absence of peer-reviewed publications, because they refuse to approach such studies. Every site has been reviewed by other biblical archaeologists to be true with the exception of the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark is closely guarded by the Temple Institute, who claims to know exactly where the Ark is located.
Now, there are some good, very detailed videos about all of these findings on YouTube. This video in particular, Ron Wyatt Discoveries 2022, I'll stick a link to it below. It's over 2 hours long. It goes into detail on each discovery. It's very thorough. I don't know anything about the person who put it together, but most of it is basically a compilation of all the documented footage and tests and analysis of the findings, etc., etc. And for the most part, in my opinion, it's very convincing. So why is this not more well known? I've been looking around at a lot of different information about this, a lot of the positive, a lot of the negative, and I've noticed what I think is a massive smear campaign against this guy and his findings. The fact alone that it seemed to be ignored by the media is interesting. And that 20 years after he first started making these findings, pretty much when he was on his deathbed, he died in 1999, you get the mainstream Christian gatekeeper platforms like Answers in Genesis, Ken Ham, for example, doing smear campaigns against his discoveries, calling him a fraud. Now, if you look at the videos and the information regarding many of his discoveries, I've got to say they seem pretty solid to me. Can't say for sure, but it seems that way to me. And when you look at the lack of media coverage and then the absolute ton of negative articles about him and where they come from and who they're connected to, and the many people around him who became his friend and then slandered him, it looks like the old infiltration trick. You look at what they say, the way it's worded, a lot of it is very empty. It's all implications. It sounds like a hit job a lot of the time. A smear campaign big time. When you see an orchestrated negative campaign against someone whilst simultaneously they're being ignored by the mainstream, it's highly suspicious. Now, I know there is a lot of talk about Ron Wyatt being a 7-day Adventist. I mean, you know my thoughts on all of these organisations. I don't trust any of them. And that's probably why he got let down by many people. In fact, 2 of his biggest detractors were 7-day Adventists. But still, whatever he is, what does it matter? I mean, what matters is, did he actually find these things or these places? Even if it's only a few of them, or even one of them, it's amazing, right? The only one out of all of these discoveries that seems a little bit iffy is the Ark of the Covenant, because there is no evidence, there are no photos, or no footage anyway. If there were samples of Jesus' dried blood, there's no organisation that has documented evidence of the tests, etc., etc. But who knows, right? And because of that one, many people who seem to want to smear and diminish this guy's discoveries will harp on about the Ark of the Covenant and forget about the Mount Sinai, Sodom and Gomorrah, Noah's Ark, and so forth. And then we have, of course, the Indiana Jones movies. Now, if you go and look for Ron Wyatt's books, DVDs, videos, paraphernalia, whatever it is, it uses a lot of the imagery of Indiana Jones, or the font style in the wording, yeah? Like this, for example. Now, I find it highly coincidental that Ron Wyatt started excavating at Noah's Ark in Turkey in 1977. He started digging for the Ark of the Covenant in 1979. He claimed to find it in 1982. And then, all of a sudden, a movie made by Steven Spielberg, the biggest director in the world, called Raiders of the Lost Ark, comes out in 1981. A film about an archaeologist who finds the Ark of the Covenant. How coincidental is that? Now, Ron Wyatt went on, as I said before, to find other things throughout the 80s. And the first 3 Indiana Jones movies were all released in the 1980s. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, 1984, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which I think was 1987 or 1989, not sure. Now, I've talked about Steven Spielberg and his movies in a previous video about how he has promoted certain subjects, certain agendas that I believe align with the New World Order. Aliens, for example, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. He made a TV show called Taken, all about alien abductions. In fact, thinking of it, the fourth Indiana Jones movie about the Crystal Skulls was about aliens. The ending had a big UFO in it. Spielberg, also known for dinosaur movies, Jurassic Park, and a host of spin-offs, which he is still involved with as producer. Plus he was involved with dinosaur cartoon series and movies. And in a recent video I showed a clip of him talking about dinosaurs being billions of years old, how he believed it, which completely conflicts with his beliefs, his religious beliefs. Check out that video on the website for more on that. He also made AI, artificial intelligence. How much of that are we hearing about today? Ready Player One. Is that conditioning people to wearing these stupid meta-style headsets, living in a counterfeit reality? And there's loads more. All of these films point to steering people away, as I said in that video, away from God. Dinosaurs. Oh, well, if dinosaurs are real, then they're millions of years old. Then God couldn't have created the world 6,000 years ago, as in the Bible. Or aliens. Oh, if aliens are real and they come from planets, well, God can't be real, right? But I never thought that Indiana Jones had an agenda behind it. Is it possible that these films about an archaeologist looking for biblical artifacts were created in the 1980s because there was someone, Ron Wyatt, who was actually going out and finding biblical artifacts, and the making of these movies was in order to overshadow those achievements? If you look at the fact that this guy was getting hardly any mainstream media attention, was not featured in the mainstream news, only word of mouth back then, and these movies come out, which are everywhere and everyone knows about, and of course they then associate archaeology and finding biblical artifacts with Indiana Jones, a fictional character in a fictional story. It overshadows what this guy was actually discovering. And then, like I showed earlier, all of his books and videos ended up getting the Indiana Jones makeover, which in my mind undermines his findings. And when people see this imagery, they mentally associate it with the fictional. That is, of course, if they ever hear about it in the first place, because the mainstream news wouldn't talk about it unless it was to accuse him of being a fraud. Interestingly enough, the most news coverage Ron Wyatt received was when he was kidnapped by Kurds in 1984 while locating Mount Sinai.
From Channel 4 News, this is The Scene at 10 with Laura Brooks, Cynthia Williams, Mike Bohan, and Joe Fisher.
Good evening. American and Turkish authorities are trying to find 5 Westerners tonight who were kidnapped earlier today by Kurdish rebels. One of the men is a Nashville amateur archaeologist. Ron Wyatt was in Turkey with a group which is trying to prove the existence of Noah's Ark. There's been no word on how the search is going.
This is the News Channel 5 Weekend Report.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brett Lee. Thank you for joining us tonight. A Nashville man is in the hands of Kurdish kidnappers tonight. 58-year-old Ron Wyatt and 3 others are being held captive in Turkey. They were working on a religious project there. And as News Channel 5's Greg Stoddard reports,
this did get featured in the news, only the lower down news stations. And every time they talked about it, they featured images of him in an Indiana Jones style hat, which I could be wrong here, but I've never seen a photograph or footage of him in that type of hat. Is this image, has it been mocked up? Again, it's tying him in with a fictional character. That's the image they want to push. And yeah, he got some news coverage for being kidnapped, but not for his discoveries. And of course, why would they? As I've said before, the media is satanic. It ain't gonna push, it ain't gonna show you things that will reinforce your belief in God or turn an unbeliever into a believer. It's going to hush that up. Difficult to disprove many of his findings, so overshadowing them and just not reporting was the strategy they have used, and hence why we now have a world that is talking about a new Indiana Jones movie. and 99% of those people have never heard or know anything about Ron Wyatt and his biblical discoveries. I think it's interesting. Check out the video link below and see what you think. I believe it's pretty convincing for the most part. I myself, though, don't need convincing, but maybe you do. Maybe you know someone who needs convincing. I don't know. Let us know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you later.